Okay, thank you for coming back. Before we go to council, I'd like to have a couple of comments from staff. Both the city attorney and the city manager would like to respond to a couple of things, and then we'll go on to the council discussion. David?
Yeah, I just want to respond to some comments just for clarification. Well, one is just to be perfectly clear, we don't make this, the staff does not make this decision. This is an action of the council. We're only providing you the options and choices that you have at your request. One of the things to clarify is we were involved in the process a long time. We've been involved in the process. We may not have been visibly present, but we've been involved and engaged for a number of years, over the last decade even, in regards to what and how the airport can be utilized as a part of a regional asset. And I think that also our position was never one that we opposed the rezone. What we opposed was just sort of the blanket rezone, because we have always understood it to be that there would be certain conditions and restrictions put on the property which would basically make it part or airport related, and we had a difference of opinion on the definition. And I think that was the confusion at the last minute in terms of where all the issues were coming from, because one minute we heard it was an eco park, then the next minute we heard it was a storage place for lady farmers, then we heard it was a possibility for marine related uses. So we were getting very mixed signals in regards to, from the board, is exactly what their plans and intent were. So what we asked for was just, can we stop and clarify this so we get an understanding so that we can all move forward in our respective positions, so we at least have a better understanding of the situation. And unfortunately, we weren't really able to do that. I think also in terms of the city's role in economic development, we have been an active partner, in fact, a leader in some of these areas. It was the city that put the money forward to create Jefferson Connections. And I point out that it says Jeff Connections, not PT Connections. The council voted to allow that to become a regional countywide business asset using the funds that were given to the city by the state as part of ferry mitigation. Also, in terms of establishing a joint licensing program with the state to help businesses, making it easier. We've also were active in the leader in putting together a joint marketing effort regionally. And all this was done in regards to a partnership that developed out of a ferry system decision. And so we've been investing millions in infrastructure in Upper Sims. We've also been studying the feasibility for Glen Cove at the request of the property owners in Glen Cove at a city expense. We've also been providing better tech access, and actually have had some tech companies actually starting to locate. And we have a few that we're permitting now that are starting to develop. And I'm actively talking with others about the possibility of locating here. We've also been supportive in putting our efforts behind the joint chamber efforts, because we feel like the only way that we're going to deal with economic development in the region is to deal with it as a common entity, not a single. Because in the past efforts and the criticisms that we've received from the state and federal offices and others is our dysfunctional approach to economic development is the leading cause of problems that they see for us, is that we're not working together, we're not working on a collaborative basis. We've done this before. The past efforts, investments of $30 billion, because it was a result of a joint investment effort on the county and the city and the state, which brought us Century to the fore. We've also invested in the Marine Science Center, and yes, we invested in the Northwest Maritime Center as part of an economic strategy. And we're already seeing national and international events being booked at that facility that are going to bring people to the community, and the possibility they bring their jobs with them when they see what we have here. As part of our strategy, also the city's revenues are stable. Our sales tax is stable. We were one of the few cities in the state that actually saw revenue growth, and this occurred even during the bridge cleanup. It's also evident by our performance in our B&O tax is better than we performed last year. And also our lodging tax, we were one of the few communities that actually saw growth in the region in lodging tax. So I think in terms of our efforts, we've been pretty positive. And we've also been very active in terms of trying to develop regional solutions. And I think that our efforts that we've done are there. It's unfortunate and regrettable that the only way that you can preserve your options for to sort of kind of keep in the game, I guess, is to deal with it through a legal strategy. But I think that's a decision that you as a council have to make in regards to what's the next step. But I think that even with any decision, that is not going to diminish our efforts to still work towards a proper solution for creating the court administration. But I think it's going to take a lot of effort to get us there.
Thank you, David. John?
Yes, I just wanted to comment on the narrowness of the decision that is before the City Council tonight, and also the issue of expense. There is a question about what the proper forum for an appeal should be, whether it should be into Superior Court through a LUPA action, or whether it should be to the Growth Management Hearings Board. As David indicated in his opening remarks, there's two different time frames within which those different appeals would have to be filed. The LUPA appeal has to be filed no later than tomorrow. The decision for the council tonight is whether or not to authorize that LUPA action to be filed tomorrow. It's not a determination to file a Growth Management Hearings Board decision or an appeal to the Growth Management Hearings Board. It's simply to authorize the LUPA action to preserve the option to later decide whether or not to file a legal action to the Growth Management Hearings Board. If the LUPA action isn't filed, then the city runs the risk of the court or the county saying that the proper forum to challenge the county action was in fact to Superior Court. And if we don't file the action to Superior Court and the county or the court successfully asserts that challenge, then the city will have lost its right to appeal. So it's really a very defensive action to file the LUPA action to avoid having the county or court assert that should have been the proper form all along. There wouldn't be any expense to filing the LUPA action other than very nominal expense, because the city would stipulate that the proper forum is before the Growth Management Hearings Board. And if the court and the county would also agree to that, then there wouldn't need to be any burdensome production of the record for the LUPA action. There wouldn't need to be any burdensome activity in front of the Superior Court. So if the council tonight chooses to authorize the city administration to file a LUPA action and give itself some time to determine over the next month and a half whether to file the Growth Management Hearings Board action, and there really doesn't need to be any pursuit of the LUPA action other than to, like I say, preserve the option and hopefully enter into a stipulation with the county and the court that the LUPA action is not necessary and the proper forum is in front of the Growth Management Hearings Board. So again, very narrow decision before the City Council tonight, and no need to incur a lot of expense in the LUPA action as